Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. My name is Niko and today I have another video for you in which we're gonna talk about flare systems. I wanted to begin by showing you a video I came across on YouTube, and in this video we get to see some steam under pressure being released. So this is a very interesting kind of placement here for the vent, because, well, as you saw, we have a stack in there right where the vent is pointed at. So as you may figure out, this is not the most safest kind of place to vent steam, because, well, you could have a situation in which you have people walking on that stack on the platform, and all of a sudden, you need to release some steam, and whoever's gonna be on that platform, on that stack, they're probably gonna be sprayed with some steam, and that steam is probably very hot as well. The reason why I wanted to start with this video is because I wanted to talk a bit about equipment and pressure. You see, all of the pieces of equipment we have on site, all of them are under pressure. Well, except I guess pieces of equipment that work under vacuum conditions. But yeah, most of our equipment is pressurized, and pressures are different everywhere. Like, you can find systems where you're only working with like 5 or 15 psi, and then there's like places where you're working like with 6,000 psi. Depends on the situation, right? So now that we know that all of our equipment on site is pressurized, you can really see where the danger lies, which is brings us to the topic of this video, which is the flare system, relief, and blowdown. So let's talk about relief and blowdown first. So relief is something that happens automatically. It's the release of pressure during some emergency events, and it's usually done automatically. So the system, the controller, or we have the pressure safety valves and stuff like that, the system would automatically open up the valve and release the pressure, which is done in order to get to the safe condition. The safe condition is when you have no pressure, right? And then we have a blowdown. Blowdown is a controlled release of pressure. Usually it's done manually, so somebody goes in and releases the pressure, or flicks a switch and opens a valve or something like that and gets the pressure out. A very interesting personal story I have is with plant 87, and one of the projects, or the one project that we did there. And in that project we had to deal with the little vents we have on top of the plant 87. So I have a picture over here, and if we take a look, you'll see that there is two small diameter pipes that are coming out. So what are those used for? In this situation, inside of plant 87, what we have is hydrocyclones, and there are actually many of them. They're actually grouped into cyclopacks. In this plant, each cyclopack has 29 cyclones. If you don't know what a cyclone is, it's basically just a cone kind of shaped device, a static device. And in this plant, I believe it separates diluent from the bitumen. And what happens during the startup of the plant is that there is a vacuum that's forming inside of the hydrocyclones. And to get rid of that vacuum, they have actually a pressure vacuum relief valve that opens up and lets the atmospheric air to get in, and this way you get rid of the vacuum. So those two pipes that we have at the top of the plant 87 building, those are the air inlets that allow air to enter during the vacuum condition when the pressure vacuum relief valve opens up. When this plant was designed in early 2000s or just before the 2000s, one of the things that they didn't account for, and it's a very rare kind of thing, during the startup of the plant, if for whatever reason you have an overpressure occurring instead of vacuum occurring, pressure vacuum relief valve would open up and allow the overpressure that's inside the cyclones to escape to the atmosphere. And in our situation, it would be bitumen mixed with diluent escaping to the atmosphere. And I guess you can figure out that when the bitumen and diluent escapes the cyclone, it will exit at those very same air inlets. So a few years ago, there was an incident in which a plant operator, or maybe it was a shift supervisor, somebody working at the plant, was climbing up those stairs that we see just in front of the plant 87, and that overpressure event has occurred and they actually got sprayed with bitumen. And I think the assumption can be made that bitumen and diluent were also pretty hot as well. So I don't know what happened to the person after that, but I know that now we are looking into changing the system around. That is, mitigating the issue that has been there ever since the plant was designed and built. Which is very interesting because for the 25, 26 years that this plant has existed, this has never occurred ever before. And just a few years ago when it did occur, that's when people realized that there is some issue that they didn't account for before. Imagine being a person walking up the stairs or walking around the plant, and all of a sudden something happens and you just get sprayed with hot bitumen and diluent. You would probably not be very happy about that. Let's just put it that way. So I brought this up as an emergency / startup kind of situation where we have vacuum and overpressure situations that can occur in our equipment, and that's something we have to deal with. As you can see, whenever we have like an overpressure event or a vacuum event where we don't want to have overpressure or vacuum, we have to get rid of that somehow. We have to either let the air in or let the pressure out somewhere. And another scenarios I wanted to bring up as an example of this is, imagine a situation in which you are shutting down your plant for, like, say, maintenance. And when you do that, what you have to do is you have to get rid of the pressure that you already have in your vessels, in your equipment, and you also have to purge the equipment. So let's talk about this. Another example from personal experience I have is plant 53, which is the sulfur recovery plant. I had to participate in a project that had to deal with furnaces that burn sour water and acid gas to produce elemental sulfur. And it was a compliance project, so there were some valves that were being replaced for the natural gas supply. When we were testing the actual furnace after all the work has been done, the operators would open up the valve to let the sour water and acid gas to get into the furnace, and they would also open up the natural gas and air supply lines to get natural gas into the furnace. And what we were testing in this situation is how long would it take for the natural gas valves to close to prevent like any fire or stuff like that. So as the acid gas, sour water, natural gas were let into the furnace, there would be a thing like an igniter that would make a spark. And if the spark was not produced within I believe it was 8 seconds, then it would close all the valves and then open up the nitrogen line just so it would purge the furnace. So basically in this situation you have a furnace that's full of explosive gases, right? So we have natural gas in there, we have some air in there, and then we have the acid gas and sour water. And all of that is under pressure too, which means that this is dangerous, and to make it safe, what they do is they purge with nitrogen, because nitrogen is an inert gas and it doesn't react and it doesn't burn with anything. And so as you pump in the nitrogen into that furnace to displace all the dangerous gases in there, those gases have to go away somewhere, right? And all of that stuff actually does go into our flare system that we're going to be talking about today. So yeah, what's interesting is that if it wasn't possible to ignite the fire inside the furnace within those 8 seconds, then the controllers would purge furnace for the next 15 minutes. So you would not be able to let in the natural gas and the acid gas into the furnace for 15 minutes, because that's the purging time, to make sure that we get rid of all the dangerous stuff. So that's another good example that shows us where does this pressure issue comes from, where this need of getting rid of dangerous stuff is coming from. And there is like a whole bunch of other scenarios when there is a plant starting up or the plant is shutting down. They have to get rid of something dangerous, some dangerous gases during maintenance as well. For when you need people to go inside the vessel, you can't let people inside the vessel if there is dangerous gases in there, so you have to purge it first, and you have to let the pressure out, and then you have to purge with nitrogen. So all of that hazardous gas has to go somewhere. Again, goes into our flare system. And the emergency events is when we want to avoid fire or something bad happening, so we try to get rid of pressure as fast as possible. So that's another example of where our flare system comes in handy. So I brought you all those examples, so let's try and define what is a flare system. So flare system is basically a system designed to get rid of pressure and to get rid of hazardous gases in the plant. And the way it deals with that is by burning those gases. So what I have in front of you right now is the picture of flare stacks we have down in plant 59. So there are 2 plants at the base plant that deal with flaring things. It's plant 19 and plant 59. Plant 19 has 3 flare stacks, 2 of which are dealing with mostly normal hydrocarbons, and the third one deals with hydrogen sulfide, which is a very common hazard at any oil refinery, any oil drilling site, any offshore oil drilling rig. And you can't really just vent this gas into the atmosphere because it's very, very bad for the environment and it's very toxic. So the best thing you can do is to burn it, and when you burn it, it turns into sulfur dioxide, I believe, and then everything else burns into the carbon dioxide, monoxide, stuff like that. And then plant 59 just has 2 flares. I've got another picture over here on which we can actually see all the 5 flares from the 2 plants that deal with flaring. So we got one over here, second one over here, that's plant 59, and then we got 1, 2, and 3 over there, that's our plant 19. And here's another aerial photo of the base plant, and on this one we can also see all those 3 flares from the plant 19 and then 2 flares from the plant 59. So what you can notice with those flares is that they are quite a bit far away from the actual plant. It's because when you burn something, there is a lot of heat that gets radiated away. So if you have equipment and stuff around, it's just gonna get warm and hot over time, and it's not desirable. So the safest thing to do is to place flare as far as possible. And if you ever seen on the offshore rigs, they also have flares as far as possible to flare away and reduce the exposure of all the other pieces of equipment to radiated heat. So by now I think you understand the purpose that flare system serves. It's to burn away toxic excess gases that get produced during plant upsets, shutdowns, startups, emergency events, stuff like that. So I'm not the greatest artist in the world, but I have prepared a nice little diagram for you today, and we're gonna go over it in detail. We're gonna start from the leftmost side over here, where I have written relief and blowdown from other plants. Let me get rid of the grid here. So each plant usually has its own blowdown collection system that collects all the liquids and gases from equipment and tries to treat it in place. Some of the stuff can be recovered, so whatever can be recovered gets recovered within the plant area. Whatever stuff that can't be recovered leaves the plant and goes to into the flare header, and then it flows down the flare header to the plant 59 or plant 19. So the first place it enters in the plant would be KO drum, which is the knockout drum. And the knockout drums are designed to separate liquids from gases. So when a relief event occurs, you're gonna have hot gases coming in because, well, they just left a vessel or some other equipment, and they didn't have time to cool down. As they travel through the flare header to the plant 59 or plant 19, over time those gases are gonna cool down and a vapor starts to form. So now we have a situation in which we have gas mixed up with liquid, which is not good. So why is this not good to have liquids in our flare systems? Well, flare systems are designed to burn gases, and when you introduce liquids, what happens is that the liquid gets to the top of the flare stack, and then once it exits the stack, it falls down. And I actually have a video in which you can see how liquid has accidentally escaped into the flare system, and basically you'll see how there's a little bit of stuff that falls down from the top of the flare. So first of all, in this video there is just a lot of stuff happening, so there's probably been a very big upset that caused so much flaring to happen. But the biggest problem here right now is with the liquid that ended up in the flare system, and now it's on top of the flare, and you'll see over here how, if I play the video, there is stuff that doesn't burn up, but rather there's stuff that's fallen down, and that's the actual liquid hydrocarbons and stuff like that. And the mushroom cloud, that's just has to do with something else. The biggest problem here is the liquid, because now you have a liquid that's burning and it's fallen down, and now it's gonna fall down on pipes, on the equipment, and it's gonna cause fire. We don't want that, so that's why we're trying to get rid of the liquid. So the knockout drum uses just a simple gravity kind of principle to separate gas from the liquids. So all the gases would get to the top of the vessel, and all of the liquid would get to the bottom of the vessel and flow away as a liquid to the like a special tank that collects all of that. Those liquids are actually referred to as flare liquids, or more often they called slopes, and they flow down to the slope collection tank and get processed at the special facility that deals with processing liquids. Let's take a look at this again. So we have gases mixed with vapors coming into the knockout drum, and then in the knockout drum we have a line that goes to the flare stack, and then another line that leaves at the bottom of the tank and goes to the slope tank as a liquid, right? Something else I actually have here is the steam sparger. So sparger is literally just a pipe that has holes in it. During the winter, when it's like -40 outside, your liquids and stuff inside the knockout drum can freeze, so they actually use steam to keep that part nice and warm. And let's take a look at the actual stack itself. So now we have the flare stack, you can see it on your screen. So what we have at the top of the stack is the pilot light and some steam jets. We'll talk about two of those in a second. So once we get to the flare stack, inside of the flare stack there is what's known as a seal water, and that's another kind of safety thing that we have in the flare system. When you have a lot of flaring happening, you generate a lot of heat, and after you finished flaring, your entire flare system starts to slowly cool down. What can happen during the cool down is that you can have a vacuum forming inside of the flare system, and if that happens, it's gonna suck air into the knockout drum, where we have a lot of hydrocarbons and flammable gases, and you can actually have a fire or explosion happening inside of the equipment. So to prevent that, we actually have a water seal. Basically, for gas, in order to get to the top of the flare stack, it first has to go through the water seal. And so what happens is basically there's a gas outlet that's about 6 inches below the water level. And in this situation, your gas bubbles through the liquid and gets to the top of the flare stack. And this prevents air from getting into the flare system, and instead of that we would have water get into the flare system, which is not a big deal. So there is also a thing with seal water where it's at the different temperatures, so you also have some hydrocarbons, gases and toxic gases condense in there. So we also have like a little overflow line that flows back into the KO drum to get rid of that overflow and to get rid of that condensed gases and hydrocarbons and toxic stuff. So when a gas passes through the seal water, it gets to the top of the flare stack, and those gases get ignited by the pilot lights. Pilot lights usually use natural gas, and sometimes there is 3 pilot lights, sometimes there is 4 pilot lights. They just have different kind of arrangements across different flare stacks, but the idea is the same, to ignite the toxic gases which are flammable and stuff like that. Some very interesting piece of information is that the flow of natural gas into the pilot light is 270,000 standard cubic feet natural gas per day, which if you do the calculations, that seems to be about 3 standard cubic feet of natural gas per second. So every second a pilot light burns 3 cubic feet of natural gas. What I don't really understand if that's 3 cubic feet per one single pilot light or it's per 3 of them, but it doesn't matter that much. And what else do we have here is the steam jets. Injecting steam at the top of the flare stack helps with getting rid of incomplete combustion. And the way it works is basically when your toxic gases, flare gases that need to be burned, enter the top of the stack, the tip of the stack, the steam that gets injected creates the turbulence in there, and that helps those toxic gases mix up with air and just burn much better, in simple kind of terms. It's a very simple system. So we have steam, 150 psi steam entering the flash drum. In the flash drum just separates steam from the condensate, so all the medium pressure condensate leaves and all the actual steam gets to the top of the stack, to the tip of the stack, and then steam gets injected through multiple jets. I actually added a small detail here to show you the little flame camera that we have here, and its purpose to measure the opacity of the flame, and based on the opacity of the flame it decides to either open up the little valve to let more steam into the top of the flare stack, or to let less steam in. So some people may not like the way I shown a flame camera and a valve over here, because those are not the standard symbols for the PNADs. I just wanted to make this diagram very simple and easy to understand. If you paid attention, you also noticed a little fluidic arrestor at the top of the flare stacks. This is your last protection from liquid getting on top of the stack, because like I showed before, we don't want liquid getting on top of the flare stack. So yeah, we have utility water supply here for the water seal. We also have natural gas that goes into the stack through the bottom as well, and that is kind of a natural gas purge, because what can happen sometimes, the flame that burns at the top of the flare can go inside of the flare in certain conditions, and to prevent that, there is a camera, another camera that monitors the flame and basically regulates the amount of natural gas coming from the bottom of the flare stack to try and prevent the flash back, the flame going into the flare system or inside of the flare stack. And just like in the knockout drum, we have the 150 pound steam supply in winter to keep all of that from freezing. And that's pretty much it for this diagram. But I do have a couple of more things I have written here that I want to talk to you about. So actually just one more thing here is the ignition systems. So in case if the flare loses flame, the system automatically tries to restart, reignite. There are spark generators at the top of the flare stack to help the light the pilot lights, and in case of, like, say there's a strong wind blowing, it might actually blow away the flame and you may lose the flame. If that happens, the control system will automatically try to reignite. If it fails to do so within 3 minutes, I believe, or something along those lines, sends an alarm to the control room, and then somebody from the control room can come into a manual station and ignite the flare manually. The manual system consists of a flame generator that mixes instrument air and natural gas. Instrument air is basically compressed air, but way more cleaner and drier. So it mixes natural gas with instrument air, and then again uses the electrical spark generator to create a flame that then travels to the top of the stack and then tries to ignite the pilot lights there, in case if the automatic system fails to ignite the flare. And we want flares to burn all the time because we want to be ready for the events when something can go wrong, and we might have a lot of toxic gases that need to be vented safely somewhere, and the flare system will do that. It will burn and safely dispose of all the toxic gases. And just like that, we are at the end of the video, and I do have some videos I will attach at the end of the video to kind of show you the flaring at the base plant. Normally the flame is pretty small, but whenever something does happen, you'll see that there's like a whole bunch of stuff being burned, and as the time goes it burns away and then it goes back to the small flame. And that's the whole purpose of the flare system, to safely get rid of the excess toxic gas. So I guess this would be the right time to say thank you for watching, and yeah, I will be seeing you next time. Bye bye.
It kind of goes like burst, 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 and then it stops, and then it bursts again, and then it stops. That's so unusual. Yeah, no, that definitely a planned upset, but it's just, you don't see that ever. I want to capture that.
Upset or something.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
So they're flaring off
The excess.
the excess stuff.
Yeah.
What's 540p? Never heard of that before. Which file? I'm closing everything. I'm shutting down my computer. I'm done with Zoom.